And Iran has renewed its retaliatory attacks in Gulf and in Israel after new strikes targeted its leaders, and we bring you all the latest.
Well, Iran expanded its retaliatory missile and drone barrage across West Asia. An Iranian drone attack struck near the U.S. consulate in Dubai, starting a fire but inflicting no casualties. Well, the attacks came a day after strikes on the U.S. embassies in Riyadh and Kuwait City, as Washington ordered diplomats to evacuate.
Interceptions lit up the night sky over Jerusalem. On the other hand, on late Tuesday, as constant rocket salvos from Iran continued, while non-stop Iranian missile fire has sent residents in various areas in Israel in and out of shelters throughout recent days. Air raid sirens rang out across multiple parts of Israel overnight as the military worked to intercept incoming Iranian fire. There were no immediate reports of significant impact, although police said munitions fell in the Tel Aviv area where one woman suffered mild shrapnel injuries.
And Israel's military launched another broad wave of strikes on targets in Iran. The military said the targets of its latest strikes include Iranian launch sites, air defense systems and additional infrastructure. The U.S. military says it has struck nearly 2,000 targets so far in Iran.
Admiral Brad Cooper of U.S. Central Command has now claimed that American forces have severely degraded Iran's air defenses and have destroyed hundreds of Iran's ballistic missiles, launchers and drones. He has also claimed that U.S. has destroyed 17 Iranian ships.
Cooper said in simple terms, we're focused on shooting all the things that can shoot at us. Now, detailing uncontested surgical strikes by B-2 and B-1 bombers. Listen to this.
Opening hours of Operation Epic Fury, U.S. Central Command forces, together with Israel, delivered overwhelming and unprecedented strikes into Iran. Many of you may remember the shock and awe strikes of 2003. The first 24 hours of this operation were nearly double the scale, and we continue with 24/7 strikes into Iran from seabed to space and cyberspace. Now, we're less than 100 hours into this operation, and we've already struck nearly 2,000 targets with more than 2,000 munitions.
The U.S. military has identified 4 American soldiers killed in the early days of the war in Iran. These soldiers were part of U.S. Army Reserve troops assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command. They were named as Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant Noah L. Titgens, Sergeant Nicole Amor, and Sergeant Declan Cody. The soldiers were killed March 1st at the port of Shuaiba, Kuwait, during a drone attack.
And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Asha Castleberry from Washington, D.C. She's a U.S. national security and foreign policy expert and a former Kuwait desk officer at U.S. Army Central. Thank you so much for joining us in the broadcast.
Thank you.
Now, Asha, I just want to understand from you, there's still some ambiguity regarding the set objectives, of the attack. And from Washington's perspective, what, according to you, were the defined objectives of this attack, and how many of these do you think have been carried out?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. Well, SEMCON is going to continue to degrade Iran's munitions as well as their air defense systems. And I think you'll see, it'll continuously happen to where they'll overwhelm it, along with Israel targeting Iranian air defense missiles or air defense systems, as well as other additional missiles. So in the meantime, we'll see that that United States, along with its allies and partners, will continue to degrade the Iranian naval power as well. The POTUS just recently mentioned that they destroyed 9 naval ships, which is significant in this warfare due to the fact that the naval and air power is the priority right now. But it'll keep going until Iran continuously targets significant areas, especially American troops or U.S. consulates, as well as other significant areas of interest, especially in the Gulf.
And also, if we do remember Trump also talking about regime change, we have some reports that do say that Trump had held talks with President of Democratic Party of Iran in Kurdistan, Mustafa Hiji, and the CIA is planning to arm Kurdish forces in Iran uprising. So we don't see really boots on ground, but on the other hand, it looks like it's an alternative of boots on ground, looking at how using Kurdish forces. How do you analyze this?
In my opinion, boots on the ground will only happen if there's a mass casualty of Americans. And I think that would be more considered at the table as far as an option to move forward with. That's the only way I foresee this, that you see mass casualties, especially with innocent Americans or just American troops.
And about the role of the Kurd forces, Quds forces?
Well, POTUS has been conducting diplomacy for quite some time. That what matters is if it works. And I think diplomacy at the end of the day will end this conflict. I think Iran will eventually relinquish itself as far as engaging in a war or a conflict against the United States and Israel. Based on what we've seen in the past, Iran is not really good at engaging in enduring war. So I believe that diplomacy will eventually resurface and conclude this conflict.
Right. We hear you, but would you agree that in attacking Iran, Donald Trump has perhaps made an enormous bet? Because if he is successful in all of his claims, it will be a generational victory for Trump. But if the military strikes fail and it results in a wider conflagration, then Trump could hurt his chances in the midterm elections. How is Washington weighing that in?
Well, Washington right now is debating on whether this war was a war of choice, or was Iran perceived as an imminent threat. And as they continue to debate that, and then also looking at whether they pass the War Powers Resolution, I think that will be a determinant on how it plays out politically. But right now, they're in the mix of debating what exactly is this that's the character of this war as far as the causation of it.
Right. And just because I want to elaborate on that point, because how is Washington perceiving this? We have reports saying that Trump is now saying that the U.S. Navy will be escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz if necessary. And he's also saying that it will be at a very reasonable price, political risk insurance, they're the terms and guarantees for financial security for all the maritime trade. At this junction where, of course, we have earlier, we knew that the U.S. Supreme Court had called the tariffs of Trump illegal. At this point, we see him also trying to ensure the companies. Do you think these companies would actually go for guarantees as such and pay the price for taking these tankers across Hormuz at this point of time when there's active attacks across the Strait of Hormuz?
There is a possibility. It depends on the escalation of this conflict. But I do believe that the United States will continue to engage in the Strait of Hormuz and continue to build out its deterrence or in pursuit of its offensive defensive missions. As long as they are engaged in diplomacy at the same time, they will continue to build up. It was a similar tactic that the United States used against Venezuela. While engaged through diplomacy, they're also utilizing defense as a way to pressure its adversary to come to the table and to surrender or give up.
Right. And having said that, does the U.S. believe that overwhelming force can perhaps weaken, or even reshape the Iranian regime without triggering, long-term chaos? Because we've seen before that taking a regime out is one thing, and then ensuring what comes after is a completely another ballgame. And of course, Iran is no Iraq. It is far larger. It is more populous and also multi-layered. Now, if instability take holds here in Iran, could the fallout rival the civil wars that we've seen in Syria, in Iraq?
Well, the problem is that there's no clear strategy that it has been presented to the lawmakers nor the American people. So in terms of regime change, there's really no plan as far as what that looks like on behalf of the United States. At the minimum, President Trump provided combat power for the Iranian people to proceed with a regime change. So it's up to the Iranian people what that looks like. Now, with regards to the Iranian people or Iranian leadership, that I believe is going to be a difficult task because it's so decentralized. We do have an interim, they do have an interim supreme leader, but we don't know what exactly is going to play out in terms of what this looks like. It just remains uncertain.
Right, and as you've just said, there is a lack of clear strategy here on one side, but on the other, the way Iran has been responding, it's doing exactly what it had threatened. It had been attacking all the army bases. It has been quite aggressive with its counterattacks. And from a U.S. defense assessment standpoint, I just want to understand, how sustainable do you think Iran is going to be in its current pace of retaliation that we're seeing?
Well, it was predictable that Iran was going to respond and engage in retaliatory airstrikes or attacks. Now, as far as the enduring piece of it, I don't believe that Iran is going to engage in this in a very long time. Just based on a pattern of Iran being able to handle itself against Israel, it did not necessarily engage in a prolonged war. So I do agree in terms of how POTUS may look at it, may not go past 30 days. I think this is going to be another short-term conflict where, again, diplomacy is probably going to end this.
And also, I'd just like to pick up, because you mentioned that the lawmakers are not aware of the plan that's going to take place if at all the regime is taken out. But we do also remember Trump also mentioning 3 names. He had said that he has 3 names that he knows who can lead Iran. This is exactly what he said. But we need to get the job done. So when we look at the objectives, it has evolved. We started with we're going to be attacking the nuclear sites. Then it went to we're going to be taking out the leader. Of course, they did. Was Khamenei, what got killed. Then there is also about the regime change or the assistance there. And now we have, of course, Rubio, who states that their objective is destruction of ballistic capabilities and their naval capabilities. At this point, what is the objective that the U.S. is going for? And is it at tandem with Israel's objectives as well?
Well, their main objective right now is to completely degrade and dismantle Iranian air defense capabilities as well as their naval power. And then beyond that point, once again, I don't think there's much of a strategy in terms of a political regime change. Now, I would say President Trump does want to win the hearts and minds of the Iranian people continuously, but I think he's just going to do that at a minimum. He may know some potential leader, but I don't think he's going to go even deeper than that, because I don't believe President Trump has the domestic politics to further intervene in terms of the political affairs of Iran. I think the American people want Iran to select who their next leader is going to be.
Also, since you mentioned diplomacy, now we've seen U.S. President Donald Trump has now threatened to halt all trade with Spain. This is after the country had barred U.S. from using military bases. We've also seen Trump just recently also criticize Keir Starmer. So looking at diplomacy, how is, they're also using, and we heard Trump say that, we can use these Spain's U.S. bases. We can do it if we want to, but we will not because it's not required as of now. So when we look at, the fact that they're at war right now and they also need these U.S. bases or maybe the bases of Spain or UK, how do you look at the comments coming in for the Spanish leader or Keir Starmer at this point? And how is it playing out for U.S.'s allies, and how are they looking at it?
Well, the problem is it further discloses the lack of synchronization that we conducted with our allies and partners. If there was a thorough synchronization or update or as a prerequisite before launching these attacks on behalf of the United States, then I think you would see better cooperation from the Europeans. President Bush did it with regards to Iraq, and so did President Obama with regards to Libya. They thoroughly went over their plan with their allies and partners before they engaged in a potential conflict. So I think this is what the problem is that there was just a lack of discussion with our allies and partners.
Right, and speaking of wars always having this domestic political dimension, we also know that, like Trump, Netanyahu too faces, elections later this year. And unlike Trump, his own job is on the line, because a lot of Israelis have been blaming him for, creating the opportunity for Hamas to attack on October 7th. Now, how much of Israel's current posture towards Iran is shaped by perhaps the domestic electoral calculus at play here?
Well, Israel is a major factor when it comes to our geopolitical issues. So, outside of this issue, it always is taken into account how we maneuver in our foreign policy, especially in the Middle East. So, just like many other issues, Israel was a major factor in terms of how do we proceed. This is also tied in, I think, with regards to the recent meeting during the Board of Peace, where all our Middle Eastern allies and partners, as well as more specifically Saudi Arabia and Israel, discuss on how they're going to proceed with Iran, because it feeds into the prospects of the Gaza environment, a post-Gaza crisis environment. So I think there was a lot of discussions and decisions that were made during that meeting last week, and now you're seeing it play out.
Right, and you were talking of allies. You were also a former Kuwait desk officer at U.S. Army Central. Now, if we look at these Gulf states who are being attacked, all these consulates being attacked in the U.S., do you think that, of course, there were reports earlier that, there was a retaliation from some Gulf states, but of course they had denied it. Do you think, looking forward at, if at all, we see more Iranian attacks, do you think that this will lead to a wider escalation and that the Gulf states can be involved in the attacks and retaliate attacks to Iran?
Yes, I mean, Iran is not necessarily an isolated state in terms of intervention. It's very easy in the Gulf states because of a lot of the Iranian terrorist cells that are just pretty much within the Gulf states and beyond that point. And so whether it's in conducting direct or indirect attacks, Iran has the advantage with regards to orchestrating this mass offensive and defensive operation. So it's because the operational environment is so fragile, it's easy for the conflict to escalate and go beyond the Gulf region. And I mean, we're already seeing a lot of security challenges involving Jordan, of course, Israel, and now even spreading all the way out to Lebanon. So it's very volatile, and it can easily spread as a result of this because of all the indirect and direct attacks that Iran can just easily conduct. I mean, Iran is in close proximity with the Gulf states, especially with regards to Qatar, UAE, and Kuwait. So it's a easily very small proximity from Iran, and there's just over the years they have just been able to plan out so many terrorist cells and also conduct cyber attacks too in these Gulf states and beyond. So this is a hybrid warfare just overall, and because Iran has studied so much of how the Gulf is built up, where are the U.S. troops and consulates and embassies, and to me it's easy for them to just engage in a major offensive defensive mission.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. But thank you so much for joining us on the Broadcasting Bureau Perspective. That was Asha Castleberry joining us from Washington, D.C. She is a national expert, a national security expert, and a foreign policy expert. Thank you so much. Appreciate your coming.
Thank you.